So what these are called in English, we call them stumbling stones, and they are for Jewish people, but in addition to that, for anyone actually who was persecuted by the Nazis. They could be communists, they could be, who knows, maybe some guy who said something at the wrong time, they could be Jewish, they could be Sinti, Roma, Gypsy, whatever, right? And we have today more than 50,000 of these in 24 countries in Europe. So Netherlands, I think in Latvia as well, there might be some, certainly some in Italy, certainly some in Austria and Switzerland and a few other places. And they always represent what I like to see, or I like to say, is the individualization of the memorial of this period. Because there's a great quote attributed to Stalin, the leader of the Soviet Union, who said, when 1 million people die, that's a statistic. When one person dies, that's a tragedy. So this idea of taking the numbers. So the Nazis, to put that in context, are said to have murdered a total of about 15 million people. 6 million Jewish people, 500,000 to 1 million Sinti Roma, and then several million communists, civilian and military and others. So it's a lot of people. Yeah. And if I was to line up every single one of them, it's very hard for the average, any of us, to sort of picture that, right? Let alone to picture all the people living in the city standing next to each other. But one guy or one woman, you can relate to that, right? Because it's very easy. So let me give you some storytelling. So we'll start off with one guy, Arthur Kroner. He worked in this building. This was a very famous publishing house. No longer exists since. And he was born in 1874. He was then later arrested. Very likely, judging by his name, he may have been Jewish, though it doesn't say what he was. He's arrested, and then in 1943 was being transferred from here to a camp. And for whatever reason, maybe he fell down, was weak, he didn't have proper food. They then shot him on the way to the camp. So he was then killed on the 2nd of April 1943. So that means Arthur would have been a maximum of 69 years of age. The other side, likely his wife, because it also gives her maiden name, Charlotte Kroner, also worked here, born in 1882, so a little bit younger than him. And she also was arrested in 1943, but was shot a bit earlier, the 31st of January 1943. And then in the middle, very likely their daughter, because they always located, like the children in the middle are underneath, born in 1905. She was then later deported in 1943 and murdered in the most famous camp in Auschwitz. So all three of them, mum, dad, and the daughter. Right? And when we talk about, I was talking about a Bebelplatz before, so you have memorial culture. This one is a grassroots kind of memorial. So a lot of the other ones come from the top down. Federal government says, we're going to do this. This was different. So this was a guy in Cologne, an artist, and his neighbor said, hey, the Nazis didn't murder any Sinti Roma, the Gypsy. She's like, nah, it's all crap. And he was like, I heard different. Did a bit of research, found the names of 200 people in the town, Cologne, over in the west. And he raised money. One of his mates makes casts out of bronze, and then the bottom bit is concrete. They're actually quite large, actually about this big underground, so they're really not that small. And then sort of the brass plates on top, welded together, and then got funding from the state government or the local council or whatever, and laid them out throughout the city. It has now expanded so much that it is mainly a privately funded initiative. You can go on the website Stumblingstone or Stolperstein in German.com or whatever, and you can find all the list of where he will next be. Because the artist, Günter Demnig, this is his full-time job now. He literally travels Europe 200-something days a year, laying these down. And I've had the privilege to be at one of the ceremonies. And the last little bit of comments I want to say is I use the word persecuted and not murdered with intention, because at the ceremony I was at, there was an 85-year-old woman. This is a street in the west of Berlin, and she had an Australian accent. I was like, huh? But she was born on that street, and her older sister and her were sent by their parents in trains to England, then got on the boat to Australia, and they got out. They were survived. They were Jewish, right? But the rest of the family, her parents, aunts, uncles, everyone else was murdered in the Holocaust. But she was sitting there. So it is, again, not just for people who were murdered, but for anyone who was a victim of persecution. Could be murdered, but could also just have been lucky like her, and it always remembers them on an individual basis. So one other last thing, some people also say, hey, it's a bit rude to step on them. Not at all, that is the point, right? Because if you step on it, you are shining it up and then making it clearer for other people. Now, one other point I just realized I'd like to mention as well. There is just one city in Germany that does not allow them. It says they're dangerous and the Jewish community doesn't like it, which is A, not true, B, not true. Any idea which city you think that might be? It's a very big city. Munich. Who said it? Munich. It's where the Nazis are from. Now, has anyone been to Munich? Anyone planning on going in the future? Bavaria? Beg your pardon?
I was there in August.
You were there in August, so you weren't there for Oktoberfest, just before. Nice weather, right? It's a nice city. Munich's a lovely city. And when you go into the main old brewery there called the Hofbrauhaus, you walk in, you look at it, we go, oh, Bavarian flags everywhere, how fantastic. Well, those Bavarian flags used to be swastikas that were painted. Munich is where the Nazis are from. And so you can imagine their branding, they have millions of tourists that just come for this beer festival. They're like, oh, by the way, Nazis are from here too, just so you know. Just so you know. Obviously doesn't fit into their branding. So the city was quite vehemently against them, and now there's been a court case that should be resolved, I think, in April next year, which is going to force them to allow them. It's quite funny, but again, 54,000 now exists right here. All right, we're going to keep walking in a sec. Any more questions, any thoughts about this? If you want to take a quick photo, I'm going to walk slowly. We're going to go to Checkpoint Charlie. That's going to be